and it is time to ask more questions. And I like to talk to people that are interesting and that I like to learn from. So I had to bring back one of my first interviews 5 years ago was with Priestess Shana Seifurt. And I am thrilled to have her back on again. I've been trying to get this girl on for some time, but she's like, no, we got to get it right, got to get it perfect. I'm like, yes, ma'am. So I had to scrap the other interviews I had done and then let's try again. So it was that third time is the charm, and I made her to go live with me. So couldn't get her back out. So welcome, my sister. It's so
Thank
good to see
you.
you again, and you
Thank
look
you
great.
so much. Thank you. Thank you. I feel good. A little tired, but I'm happy to be sharing this time with you. And yes, I know how I am. There's no such thing as perfect, but there's always better and better and better. And that's my path. It's what I
Yeah,
strive for in everything I do. The better and the better and the better.
thank you.
So
And one of the things I like about Shayna is that in her pursuit of knowledge, personal growth, and this whole what are we doing here on the planet spiritually, physically, emotionally, etc. She goes, I'm not, looking for a garage band musician level of knowledge. I want
oh yeah.
Carnegie Hall. I
You need a
want to get it
Philharmonic
up.
Orchestra. That's right.
Baby,
That's
if we're
right.
not
No
going to the
local
top,
bands.
we ain't gonna do it. So I went, oh, what you paying attention to? And then what are you listening to? And so this talk was about words. This is one of the conversations that gives me that what? Say what? Moment. And I have to go, wait, explain to me that again. And I want to talk about the misuse of our language or the lack of letters and words that we do not have in the English language that has really handicapped us and allowed us to be manipulated. So that's where we wanted to start. But there's really, Shana, can you go back and tell us how you got into paying attention to the language this way?
How did I start? Well, as you well know, courage, I am on a path of self mastery. That has been my first and only goal that I have for this lifetime around. Um, I think it started when I realized the level of lies and deception that I have been taught not only from school, but from society, from environment, from quote unquote mentors, the misinformation they've genuinely had, which they share as factual, and so on and so forth. And at some point, just everything became suspect to me. Everything became suspect. Colors, words, direction, division, everything. So I decided to go back and relearn, unlearn, and then relearn.
Mm,
And I'm still in that process. I am nowhere near the level of self mastery that I'm looking towards, but
mm,
it is a path that I am thoroughly enjoying. It is frightening at times, some of the things I've come across, and it is also awe inspiring at times, and something that I thoroughly enjoy doing, and really feel that it's my obligation and responsibility, and there is no other program going on for me
mm,
except for the one to know myself the most. I think one of the biggest things with languages that sort of tip me off is I'm a big observer. I do manage to meld into the background in order to observe things. It's rare that I make myself seen or very present or very visible in group settings. So I would listen to people, and I have witnessed several arguments about people arguing while saying the exact same thing, just using different words. And I found that fascinating. So I'm like, well,
mhm.
what is it? How can they not realize that not only are they saying the exact same thing, but
Right.
there's all this heated emotion, and they're just using slightly different words to express themselves, or even taking it from a different perspective, but it's still the exact same end result, the same consequence. And so that's when I started listening more to words, and more importantly, listening to the words that I use. Everything I learn, I bring back to myself. To me, there is nothing worth learning if I cannot bring it back to myself and find some way to empower, educate, utilize, practice for myself. So that's how I started, just from listening to other people and recognizing gross misinterpretations and arguments over very, very slight differences of word use.
Well, I think that's what they call drama. I mean, if people communicated more honestly, we wouldn't even have drama.
Mm,
Like the whole movie industry is built on miscommunication, and even music has been built on not being able to communicate and then using song to speak afterwards of true emotions instead of communicating honestly. So I have came across that same thing and realized primarily in music that I was singing words I didn't want to sing. I
mm,
was kind of damning myself into a pattern. And the worst of that is that in training myself, and talk about a manipulative way of abusing yourself, was with the
mm,
words that we sing to
mm-hmm,
ourselves.
mm-hmm.
So I want to go back though. Let's talk about the English language, because one of the things that struck me was what's missing in the English language.
Well, I am a big researcher. Is another thing. Part of self mastery is learning as much as possible. So I
Yeah.
do an obscene amount of research on the topics that interest
No
me.
such thing as
Yeah, I
obscene
know.
amount of research.
Oh, but I mean obscene in a kinky way, in a hot way.
My first fetish.
There you go.
Now you know why I love Shana, y'all.
Sapiosexual. That's
Thank
right.
you.
That's right. Give me the knot. Turn me on with something new.
Thank you.
Let me drink that. Let me learn from that. So
Yes.
yes, I am
See, I told y'all we'd have fun with her. Okay.
a massive researcher. Um, so one of the basic things, and I think we spoke about this before.
Come, I gotta
Something
get
you get comfy, you break
comfy.
your stuff.
Put my feet up.
Something as simple as the word snow. I don't know when I heard that the Inuit had over, I don't know how many hundreds
32.
of
Like 30, 32. But
I
more.
have a lot of words to describe something that we have one word for. And then I thought about more complex things like love, spirituality. These are vast, vast, fluid, detailed, like concepts that we have two words for. And it just doesn't seem correct to me. It doesn't seem even possible that we have so many deep concepts with so few words to describe all the subtleties and variations that lie within those concepts.
Right.
Love is huge. When I
Yeah.
say I love you, it is not the same as I love my dog, as I love that chocolate cupcake, but I'm still using the same word.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel that there's something missing from the English language. I don't know if it's on purpose or not. I don't know if it was a language, excuse me, if it was a language that was structured in a way to, because a lack of vocabulary, a lack of being able to express subtleties does equal a lack of growth. It does equal a lack of empowerment.
Yeah.
So whether it's on purpose or not, I don't know. Remember, I said everything is suspect.
That's right. Ignorance is part of the plan, and I think we can all accept that. You don't want an
Something's
educated
going on.
population. Right.
Something's going on. Why do some languages have hundreds of characters, quote
Right.
unquote letters, and we don't? Like, what is missing
Right.
here? And
Right.
that's what I feel. I feel something, maybe even half of something is missing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have been paying a lot of attention and revisiting words. I always felt in my journey that a lot of the clues are actually right in front of our face. They're
Mm-hmm.
not actually things that have to be dug through. I do a lot of digging, but I do a lot of digging to come back to A plus B equals C. I just didn't see it that way before. So
Mm-hmm.
when we look at certain words, if we re-look at them and break them up and see what's in there, a lot of the clues are in there. Let me take a very simple example, and please, everybody, what I'm saying is not 100% factual for everybody. It is my observations. It's just things that I'm playing around with. And if you speak to me next week, I may have a different point of view depending on what else I learn and what else I have researched. But something as simple as the word blessed.
Mm,
Blessed is be less.
mm,
Why would I want to be less? I would rather be more. I'd rather be honored. There are other words put together that I can think of that I find more uplifting than to be less. Now, is that one of the, yeah, I'm trying to be careful here, but what I'm saying is I'm just looking at words again, exactly how they're written, breaking them down. To me, just because something's spelled different but pronounced the exact same way, I think that's suspect. I feel
right.
that's, yeah, I feel it's suspect because we live in a place of an environment of tone and vibration and sound. And I don't think the universe is saying, oh, you put that I before the E, so that means you're meaning something different. No, there's a sound that goes with certain words. And I
Mm.
don't know how much power we have to say, oh, yes, this sound means this way, but not this way. The sound is the sound, in my opinion.
Right. You make that point with good morning.
Good morning. So, morning, yes, morning is not fun. I've never known anybody to really enjoy the act of mourning
Right.
because we put the word good before it is kind of odd. One of the replacements, and it takes a lot to replace phrases that we're so used to, but I heard
Hmm.
this young lady say, grand rising.
Yeah.
Grand rising. Now,
There we go.
isn't that way the way to start a day? Like I heard
Hmm.
that, and it has everything. Grand is a neutral word. It just means big and awesome. Rising
Nice.
is uplifting, and that is how I want to start my day. I don't care anymore how chipper somebody makes good morning sound. It just, I don't feel that. I need to
Right.
have, that's what I'm looking for, the feeling and connection with the sounds and the words that I'm using.
It's very interesting about connecting with feeling because when you say feeling, I think of intuitive.
Mm,
There's an intelligence in our instinctual knowledge, and that those instinctual brain cells, it's feel, and
mm,
that's how they communicate, and that's how we react. You know, when we're afraid, it's a feeling, and when
mm,
it's anger, it's a feeling. When it's sexual attraction, it's a feeling. And so trusting those instinctual intelligence systems, because again, the brain is easily manipulated at the point of this conversation by words, so that we have to look at them a little more deeply. I want you to also talk about the word mortgage.
Oh, yeah, I was playing around with mortgage. I speak French. I'm actually
Mhm.
from a French place. And mortgage, I don't know if it was originally a French word, but I do know it starts
Yeah.
with mort, which means death.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was very interesting. I did hear for the part of gage, and I have to look that up because I think that's been utilized differently or spelled differently, but it does more or less mean a death sentence or death certificate or death pledge,
Yeah.
something like that. And what's
Yeah.
interesting is we've actually, here where I'm from Montreal, I don't know if it's the same in all French speaking countries, but they actually changed the word mortgage to hypothèque. And I haven't looked into the breakdown of hypothèque, but it's been changed. They've decided to get rid of the word mortgage and bring in a new word for what it means to own money through the purchase of a house.
Ah.
So I
Yeah.
thought that was interesting. Um, there are so many nice. Used to mean silly and foolish. Awful means filled with awe. You know,
Ah.
we awful means filled with awe. It
How
means the
interesting.
exact, yeah, yeah. There's and again looking at the word awe, full,
Sure.
full of awe. So that's what I
Mm-hmm.
mean by the little clues that are right in front of our faces. And so I am not necessarily saying, again, it's not about right or wrong. I left that path a long time ago. It is very confusing and there is no win to it, but it's about what's best for me. And
Right.
so if I'm speaking with you and I'm speaking with others, what I'm saying is we have the right to find what's best for us. Just because we've been told something by someone, even if it is within their highest intentions and it works for them, does not necessarily mean that it will work for us. So I am choosing different words that make me feel more of towards what I'm saying and the results and the consequences that I'm looking for through a conversation. And I'm just saying for everybody to take a look at the same. It's not so much the words we use. The first biggest step is listening to what we say, regardless of whether we're using correct words or empowered words or what have
Right.
you. It's
Right.
just listening to what we
Exactly.
say.
Ew, that's a habit that we have to really pull back. And
It's
meditation or
huge.
whatever way you get there, slowing down and listening to the phrases that come out, I think unconsciously, because that's the ones that seem to me the most
Hmm.
self-sabotaging.
The
You know,
record, that record playing,
right.
those
We can
phrases.
hear
Yeah.
our mother or our father in our head that's
That
derogatory.
song.
That song I was stuck with in my head, which I will not repeat to save
Hmm.
everybody from. But it is an interesting one how they can stick, and they're and interesting for me is watching neurons connect under a microscope. There was a lovely little piece of video that we could actually see thought neurons correcting in the body and connecting as the more focus that is given to that thought, the more it grows. And watching that, I just went, well, those are growing sometimes without my consent or
Mm.
my intent, more so
Hmm.
because of song, because of entrainment. And so I'm looking at words now. I want to go back to love because it was one of the things I'd read C.S. Lewis's work on the four loves. Actually, he talks about the five loves, and trying to explain love in the various different contexts of friendship or patriotic or erotic, and just using love and but still stuck with that one word and going, it's still not enough. And so I remember his work and going, uh-huh, we need some more work with this.
Hmm.
And one of the words that was brought up was awesome, was one of the questions a sister Patreon member asked about, because I was like, oh, um, well, full of awe, but some awe. It's interesting.
Mm.
Some awe,
Again, yeah. Not a lot, just some.
right? Just like,
Yeah, just a little bit. Yeah, not it's not one of the words I have looked into personally, but again, if I were just to look at the word again, yes, awe and some put
some awe.
together. So,
Yeah,
and maybe sometimes some awe is all right. Maybe sometimes
some
you don't
other.
want a whole lot of awe. Sometimes you might not want to be awful and filled with awe. Sometimes you just want a little bit, but it's just
Oh,
about
knowing.
knowing what one's
Mm,
saying and taking responsibility for it. There is a huge movement of there's free speech, but then there's not a lack of taking responsibility for the speech. And one of the biggest examples I have of that is the universal you, which I was
right.
actually taught about when going through my certification in neurolinguistic programming. So, when you're walking down the street and you come across this guy and he says to you, no, this is my story. When I'm walking across the street and I run into somebody and that person says to me, that is a major, it's probably one of the top 5 biggest shifts that I've had in my language and in my thought process.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that I'm still working on because it's very easy to fall into. We have this habit of projecting our thoughts onto the person that we're speaking to.
Right.
And it's a twofold sin.
Mm-hmm.
The first is it puts responsibility on the other person for thoughts and actions that they might never have experienced or will have experienced in their life. And
That's right.
second of all, it takes away the responsibility of owning those thoughts and those actions. If I were to convey any message today, if anybody were to leave with anything to practice, I would say forget words, forget research, work on that universal you. When we take back the I of our thoughts and our ideas, it not only changes everything, how we see ourselves and how we think, but it also gives us a chance to reevaluate what we're saying. That goes ties very deeply into listening to what we're saying. Because I might say, you know, when you're having a fight with your spouse and you call them a stinking is very different. I've put that on you. But if I say, when I'm fighting with my spouse and I call him or her a stinking, and I'm like, whoa, why would I do that? Do I really want to say that to them? Like, it just gives me back responsibility and gives me a chance to reflect on, do I want to own those ideas and that thought and that action, or do I want to change it up? And I think that is it was mind blowing, chakra opening, expansive.
Agree.
Yeah,
Agree.
get rid of that universal you, man. It is a lie and a deception.
It's a
It's not right.
projection.
It's
I
a
see it
projection.
simply as projecting. It's not the willingness to take on responsibility, but to project it
In an ignorant
on
way too, because we
unfairly.
don't even yeah, we don't even realize we're doing it most of the time. But it
Exactly.
is very empowering to
It,
take back
it,
the I.
and yet I agree with people and trust me, I do a lot of couples counseling, and I can listen to the you. It always starts out he did, she did, that back and forth, and then the questions, and then what do I own? Because you can't get to healing until you own your own words and your own responsibility in the fight.
Mm,
So it's one thing to project because that projecting is just trying to get somebody else changing and not trying to change yourself.
mm,
So I'm like, we ain't getting anywhere until we get to some I statements. So I hear you on
mm-hmm.
that one. I'm so glad you brought NLP and neuro linguistic programming. And I've also been certified in that. And I realize neuro is the mind, linguistic is language, and programming is what we're
It's
doing.
programming,
It's
yeah.
programming, it's just simply that, and using words to reprogram the mind. And as a responsibility as a species, we have to realize the programming that's been done to us
Mm-hmm.
with words, and particularly at Western advertising. And it was Sigmund Freud's nephew who was the big influencer in the American advertising and marketing industry in the 50s, and taking his work and going, how do you manipulate people? How do you create fear in people? How do you motivate them to move in the direction of either purchasing, or staying away from, or shaming them into behaviors you want them to? And it's clearly done with words. And I've always seen that in political campaigns, being a poli sci major in college, but seeing it in advertising and then seeing it in music and seeing it in Hollywood. And I was grateful not to be raised with a lot of American television because I was the outsider looking in. And then when I would come in and see it, I go, boy, they picked some interesting adjectives to describe a scene. I was like, wait a minute, and making the enemy real.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Again, projective language used, and this is probably before 1988 when Reagan took off the truth requirements in news media. I could still hear some of that language changing with adjectives. So, but NLP has some useful tools. So, can you talk a little about what we can do? The universal you is the first one to catch yourself on that, and then I say use it as a trigger, right? And when you hear it come out of your mouth, it's
Correct
time
it.
to correct it
Correct it. Mm-hmm.
and use the I. Is there any other tools like that that come to mind?
Um, I mean, there are so many. It's funny. We have technology that's used to manipulate in so many ways, but the same things that manipulate are the same things that can be used to heal and to be used towards self awareness. I think I am, for myself, I am on an internal journey. So everything that I do um, is checked by myself. So, in terms of tools, I don't know if I really think of it as tools as so much, okay, I do not know this is the result I want. What is going to get me there the fastest? So, yes, NLP did provide the universal you. In fact, NLP has actually several different, what else did I learn from them? Um, everything I learn that I use just gets melded together into who I am, and I find it difficult sometimes to separate those what I learned from there. I'm just going to leave NLP with the greatest gift that one of the greatest gift that's been given to me, which is the universal you. Um, Listening to what I'm saying. So a tool is slowing speech down. Now, one of the things that we discussed before we did this interview is I am not what I consider a visual type of person because I tend to think. I go inside, my eyes roll up because I'm looking for the correct and most authentic way to express myself. I close my eyes sometimes because I want to cut off any stimulation and really focus on what's being said within me so that I may share it. And so that whole process is a tool of just slowing everything down in order to take responsibility, in order to hear what I'm saying, in order to say it quickly first, make sure it sounds correct and it represents me. And if not, then I need to take the time to say that again, redo it in my mind before something actually comes out of my mouth. Slowing down is a tool. It is not an easy tool. I'm a very animated, expressive person. I am also sort of, we'll say a little rough because I live a very hermetic lifestyle and I do have militant tendencies. I find myself sometimes saying things really, really boldly, and my intentions are always from love, but it might not always sound that way when it comes out of my mouth. So it's my responsibility to put myself in another person's shoes. What result do I want? How do I want them to feel? What do I want the outcome to be? I don't just have a conversation with somebody for the sake of talking. That's really not my thing. I don't do small talk. I feel very uncomfortable with it. I have conversations for a reason. I must know what that reason is first. I must know what my outcome is, and then I cater my words and my expressions towards the best way to get that outcome. And that can only be done through slowing down.
I love what
Oh, you
breaking up
froze.
here, so I'm
Yeah,
back a
yeah.
minute.
Okay, perfect.
What what is the goal? Slowing down enough to think about what is the goal of the conversation. Are
Mm-hmm.
we learning? It's easier when it's confrontation than it's you're taking the defensive posture and trying to protect yourself. But when I am living in a small town, and I have lots of small talk. It's the same hello, how are you, and what's going on with you. And what I like about this town is there is a depth of conversation, and that there are people. I met a gentleman we were doing our first intros, and where you from, that da da da, and he says, I don't want to talk about three third dimensional stuff. Let's get to fifth dimensional. What do you
Oh, I
hear?
like
I'm like,
talk to me.
yeah.
That's a conversation.
All
Oh
right, like,
yeah.
had to look at you a
Right?
little differently
See,
now.
make your back a little straighter. That's right.
Yes, indeed. I'm like, okay, impress me. So kick it up a notch,
Mm-hmm.
bring in that level and raise the bar. And
Mm-hmm.
I really appreciate that from the masculine, that just a calling of to raise the bar of our behavior, that we don't get into this, sexual manipulation of each other. And I found that a lot of misuse of language, or um, passive aggressive, deceptive
Mm-hmm.
behaviors in our flirting.
Mm-hmm.
Also, and language gets used and abused that way. And it's what we don't say that's, what is that? The sin of omission, or not admitting to. Right now, what's coming to me is it was my first husband James, who didn't tell me he was allergic to garlic.
Mm-hmm.
I own several garlic roasters and lots of garlic in my home. So I had to give that up for the years we were together. And I went, you could have told me that little thing. That
Yeah,
would have
that's
made
a
a,
tough one.
that was a tough one. I was like, dang, baby, a little honesty goes a long way. I can make conscious decisions that way. But it was an interesting thing about just learning about what we don't say and what we
Mm-hmm.
need to say to each other. And that radical honesty that needs to come in our most intimate relationships, because it is those are the ones that make and break most painfully in our life or most successfully in our lives. So it is our choice. If we're going to be honest, then we'll be honest, and dating gives us that opportunity to practice
Mhm.
honesty. And I
Mhm.
encourage people to do that. Practice it. Try, speak your truth and see what
Mhm.
happens. Because don't you want to know now
Mhm.
versus
Well,
waiting?
right. That's one thing, but also somebody, a friend of mine, told me a long time ago, and I found it to be true. First of all, passive aggressiveness drives me up the wall. Like, spit it out. I'm someone who doesn't even like poetry. Like, don't give me any euphemisms. Spit it out. Just say it. Just say it. I don't have time for the flowery. Just say it. But when it comes to relationships and dealing with uncomfortable situations, when there's an issue, our body responds immediately. It does not matter what pours out of your mouth. If the point is one is reeking with some type of physical discomfort that is tangible physically or kinesthetically or however one wants to say it, and the other person knows. It is it's so rare that two people don't know that there's a conflict or a problem just through emotions that it's not even worth talking about the exceptions. So if two people are feeling a way together and decide to use words that don't correspond, reflect, or anything with that feeling, what is that? Like, what is that? So yes, honesty is one thing, but it's more than honesty. It's an accepting of how one is feeling. Like, nobody has the right to tell me how to feel and how not to feel. That is not what we're talking about here. My only job is to express it in a way that is clear, that leaves room for communication and healing. But
Mm-hmm.
nobody has the right to be like, oh, you shouldn't feel that way. What do you, this is how I feel. You know, I feel this way because I'm feeling it. It is, it's that nonverbal communication. We're already doing it. So there's no point in using words that don't reflect that or that
Right.
camouflage or diminish that. Let's just have it out. I was married. Going to bed upset was not an option. I am not going into my bed not feeling well. I am not having a good sleep was
Ooh,
not an option. No, I would be the type of person, 2 o'clock in the morning, you remember what she said 3 days ago? So I thought about it, and this is how I feel. Let's talk about it.
yeah.
Like, to
That,
me, yeah, and I am possibly a little more exaggerated about it than others, but it's so important for me to be integral to myself and to
mm-hmm.
resolve things. I do not like feeling icky or uncomfortable, especially with somebody who I care deeply for. Like, I don't know,
Agreed. Agreed.
we were together for almost 8 years, and anybody who's seen us, we've never had a yelling match. In 8 years, we never yelled at each other. We never used things that we said in confidence as ammunition in an
Mm-hmm.
argument. Like,
Mm-hmm.
things like that to me are abhorrent and not
Yeah.
acceptable
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so unnecessary and not fruitful. Just useless, useless, useless. Deal with the situation. Respect your emotions. How you feel is how you feel. I have felt away many times only to have a conversation to come to realize that I had no reason to feel that way. The explanation was clear. I
Mm,
misunderstood and I felt so much better because I healed that
I
feeling. I
agree.
didn't
I agree.
camouflage it or diminish it. It healed through that conversation.
Sure.
And that's the only program I'm on. Bring
I
on the healing.
I agree. And you said something at the beginning about that openness and that communication, and that we can avoid so much conflict if we just do that. And
Mhm.
with the relationships in particular, that denial of there's a problem is the first problem, and the passive aggressive approach to it, or the
Yeah.
phrase "you should know," and I'm like,
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Don't.
ooh. And
Yeah.
there's a young brother who is an actor and really just gifted, named Jeremy Holloway, who I follow on Instagram. And he does these little vignettes about relationships, in particular African American couples, and just that lack of communication, how that always causes the conflict, or being direct and communicate honestly, and not sticking it's creating the world from your own head and your own
Mm-hmm.
perceptions, and
Mm-hmm.
realizing you are in a collective of other thoughts and other views, and you are part of that perspective. As you viewed, you are viewed. So when people choose not to use words to communicate their truthfulness, their and I think mostly because we don't know how. We're afraid to communicate. It's not anger, it's
We're
hurt.
afraid of rejection.
We're afraid of rejection, and it's a frustrating one to be afraid of that all the
Mm-hmm.
time, and have that the
Mm-hmm.
driver to keep covering up, and putting up the chest, or using a manipulative, or again, the passive aggressive. I'm going to take something away because you didn't, or like take affection away because you didn't do something I wanted you to do or I expected you to do. And that unspoken communication is just as painful. And we use our words then as daggers that come out. Whew.
Mm-hmm.
And my had a partner who was quite the opposite of me, and his words, and he was, I'm a pig in the Chinese, and he was a snake, and his words would just like come out like vibrates, and I'm like, whoa, where did that come from? And which is bite me in the butt, and I'd have to go, ooh. And with when I was frustrated and I had a lack of words, like I need some word shortcuts here, but I was like, all right, I need to work on that. But it was a challenge for me to raise my own bar and go, well, you obviously are not communicating clearly enough.
You obviously.
Right. Well, I was speaking to myself. I am
Yeah.
obviously not communicating well enough. Thank you. Because that you was the personal you.
Yeah.
Thank you, though, to not get that reaction, because action creates reaction.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always going to start somewhere. And so if you don't nip it in the bud and call the action out, and I should say you, and I should say if I don't nip it in the
Mm-hmm.
bud and catch myself,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to keep repeating the same mistake.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you. I'm like, ooh, ooh.
It's yeah, but doesn't it feel different?
It does very
It
much.
does. It does. I
Mm-hmm,
know
mm-hmm.
it's something again I'm still working on. I do slip up every now and then, but on the whole, I'm big on responsibility. We were talking about fear of rejection. I found for me, I think what I did is I owned all the scary things first. I would rather be rejected than to be misrepresent myself.
Oh, yes.
I would rather be single than to settle. I would rather be I would rather be insulted for something that I know is not me than to stand in my truth and possibly be insulted for that. Like I just whatever the scary possibilities are, I think I've just dealt with those and owned those, the potential of those, because for me, they're nowhere near as frightening as not being noble or integral to myself. So yeah, I'll have that conversation and don't be the you should have known with me because again I'll throw out my I don't read poetry line. So no, I don't do that. You can just say it. Say it. I can take it. Say it.
Yeah.
We can talk about it. I have a vast vocabulary. And again, I have a goal. My goal is to heal this situation. So, regardless of what you say, my whole framework is going towards healing and growing from this situation. And so,
Agree.
what other possibility is there? Even if I do it, end up doing it by myself. If somebody doesn't want to participate, that is their option. But I know that's my goal, and so everything is geared towards that. So I find the fear lessens of it.
Mm-hmm,
It's not gone, but it
mm-hmm,
lessens.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I agree. Well, that's kind of our bottom line. We are in some fearful times, so we have to be strong in ourselves to face what's ahead a lot of
Mm.
the time. So I'm grounded and anchored in my truth, and my responsibility of doing the best I know how. and charge on from there. Awesome. Okay, I just gotta show people something because you were just adorable. I just want to show my Shana from back in the day, y'all.
Wow, let me see. I have, oh my goodness, our first interview. How long ago is that?
5 years ago.
Wow, look at
Look at us.
that. You have no locks.
I had no hair.
I wonder what I'm hiding. Was I hiding
You
locks
had some
underneath? I
locks,
must
but
have had locks. And
yeah,
it's
you had
not this
locks.
set. Yeah,
No,
I spent probably half my life in locks now. Oh, look at
nice.
that. Where's that shirt? Where's that necklace? I
And
have
then
one of those earrings. I still have one.
I know I left that dress in
Oh,
Thailand. That was when I had
nice.
to give up color, but I just had to share that with y'all because this
Oh,
woman has
thank
been
you.
doing the work for a while with me, and we started with a concept called Goddess University, and it was
Mhm.
God hyphen DESS, God and Goddess, because
Divine
I understand
feminine, divine masculine. There is not
that's
one
who
without the
we
other,
are.
and I do not want to be one without the other.
Right, exactly. We
Mhm.
need both, and it because of the sound,
Mhm.
it sounded sexist,
Mhm.
and I went, no, that's not my point. But people and they would just write it off, and I went, okay, I get it, but that's it is the words matter, and I
Yeah.
missed it on that, and it was a frustrating one of trying to get that going and go because it was just some basic information of how do we take care of ourselves on the land? The basic tools for survival, child rearing and dying, and conscious coupling and sexual intelligence, and knowing these things about ourselves. And then how do we grow in food and et cetera, all the things we need to raise real healthy communities. And rebuilding that. So that was one of those lessons I learned along the way of what do we need to do different? And
Mhm.
I will just keep working. It's like, as we said, tomorrow I may learn
Chop
something
wood,
else.
carry water.
Chop wood, carry water. What do you do
Mhm.
before and after enlightenment?
Mhm.
Chop wood and carry water. Well, my sister, you've
This
done
has been awesome.
it. Are you pleased with this one?
Ah, yes. This one
Okay.
may be put forth. No,
Thank you.
I just want to make sure again it goes back to my integrity, my nobility, making sure I provide the best and highest part of myself to whoever's listening.
Thank you. All right, y'all.
Thank
You know
you.
what to do. Subscribe, join the Patreon, follow me on Facebook on live on Thursdays, and get involved and ask the questions that needed to be asked, especially for the Patreon circles if you're members there. This is an interactive. I'm doing research that we all need to know, and so I want to have you involved in that. And thank you, Shana, for being one of my
My
first
pleasure
subscribers.
and
It's
honor.
really the encouragement to keep going is
You
really
don't
the
stop, and I love that. No matter where you are, I mean, we've only known each other for maybe about 7 years now, but
yeah.
our path started long before this. We are dedicated to being who we are and the most of that, and I think it's beautiful.
Thank you. You're
Hmm.
right. As my sister Flair Brune says, can't stop, won't stop.
There you go. There you
Can't
go. I
stop,
like
won't stop.
that.
All right, y'all. Love y'all. Take care and hang on, Shane.
I will.